Hello everyone, and welcome to Straight Chilling. Each week we watch and review a horror film for your entertainment. You can send all questions and comments to straightchillingpodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to keep chilling.
Yeah, we straight chillin', serial killing. 5 cold feelings on the mic, got you reeling. 5-star ratings from the floor to the ceiling. If you get your 1 star, no time for feelings. Got a demon DJ, all the 1s and 2s. By the name of someone, so don't get confused. So grab a seat by the fire, roast them all over 2. And prepare to hear the legend of the Straight Chillin' crew.
What up, nerds? Welcome to another stifling episode of Straight Chilling. My name is Bob, and I'll be your host for the evening. This is episode number 193, recorded Sunday, December 16th, 2018. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Jacob's Ladder, which was chosen by one of our glorious Patreons, Matthew. Thanks, Matthew! Before we get into the show, let me introduce everyone else tonight. First up, calling from Santa Barbara, California, my boy Randy Gandy G. Landy.
Well, did you describe the night as stifling?
Yes.
Your descriptions of things are getting more and more out of line with reality as time goes on. I don't understand where you're pulling that from. Stifling in what way?
I don't know. Maybe watching this movie just kind of derailed my mind. That's all I got.
Okay.
That's
Sweet.
my
Good
explanation. Thanks. Thanks, man. Yes, and last but not least, calling in from Southern Korea, my boy Soju.
What up? It's your boy Soju Stains.
What the? Ooh. You taking some testosterone pills, buddy? Going deep?
Soju Stains.
It sounds
All
natural, and
Yeah.
that's very important. I like
believe
it.
You. I had to, it's Matthew's special episode. Had to represent,
Yeah, it is.
You had to dig your soul out.
Yeah, had to bring the soul for Matthew's pick.
Had to juice your soul. What are you slamming?
What are you chewing?
Breakfast, aka a brownie, because I'm an adult.
Yeah, okay. Going for the type 2, huh?
I just woke up, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes ago. Quick shower, make some coffee, look for breakfast, and we're headed out of town, so we don't have a lot of groceries, so I picked up a brownie.
Well,
Nice.
God bless.
Yes.
Little bit of housekeeping. Another reminder that we have the January poll pick posted on Patreon. If you support us at the $5 level or above, you can vote. The movies that are up there for you to vote between are The Descent, Pieces, and Scanners. The winner of this vote is going to dictate an episode that we talk about in January 2019.
How those numbers looking, Bob?
It's all tied, man.
All of it?
Across the board, yeah.
Wow.
People are having a hard time with this week.
So you've got until the end of December to vote, and obviously we need a tiebreaker, so at least one more person needs to vote.
Well,
Yeah.
you got, what, like 2 weeks or something?
Yeah, almost exactly 2 weeks left to vote, and there are several of you that still need to vote. So please do that, or else we're just going to pick one of these movies, I guess. I don't know. We'll just do this one. Also, quick shout out. We got a couple new patrons that we need to recognize. Big thanks to Mr. Stephen King for supporting us on Patreon. The one, the only Stephen King, of course. And also, big shout out.
The only one that matters.
That's right.
Yeah.
Also, big shouts outs to Matt G for supporting us on Patreon.
Thanks, guys.
Whoop, whoop. You guys are about to get a new special exclusive coming to your ear hole.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's an exclusive Patreon bonus episode of a top 10 Cooter of 2018.
You did the math?
Your boy Soul Juice ran through the Cooter profile. He ran through the top 10 of 2018. And let me tell you, you don't want to miss this bonus episode.
I have an important follow-up. How much did you have to drink while recording this particular episode?
an appropriate amount for the
A shot per Cooter? One shot per Cooter?
A dump truck
probably
of
about,
soju.
actually. Well, I don't. Yeah.
Does that include the honorable mentions?
How are you feeling this sunny and beautiful morning?
Yeah, I'm a little hungover. How to pour the coffee for sure. Talking Cooter is heavy burden on a man. You know, I mean, you're getting down into the dirt there. You know, you really gotta
White
Play in the
man's
dirt, you get
burden.
dirty.
really fucks with your psyche. You know, you gotta drown it out.
You're starting to have like a penchant for like leather goods and beating
Like
people up for no reason or something.
Like one of those old grizzled cops, you know, old grizzled detectives. I've seen
Too much shit.
I had to comb through more than 10 Cooters to get to this list.
This is the kind of research that turns a normal average person into training day. So this is what happens, people. Cooter hunt is not for the faint of heart.
Justin will never be the same. Slamming a brownie.
I can't answer because my mouth's full of
Slamming
brownie.
What you guys can't see on the podcast at home is that Justin doesn't even have a brownie. He's just putting his hand up to his mouth. It's really weird. Something's really fucked up with this guy now.
What you can see is this episode. If you didn't know, we have been, I don't know, this is like the 4th episode we've been recording a video stream too. And actually, since we're covering housekeeping, very important. So apparently, now that we're actually putting stuff on YouTube, we need 100 subscribers to appropriate like a URL link. So anytime I joke about finding us on YouTube, we really have no associated link because we don't have enough subscribers. So please, if you could take some time, find us on YouTube, just do Straight Chilling Podcast and you'll see our logo and the black and red come up. Click on that and hit subscribe. Once we get up to 100, we can give ourselves an appropriate URL so that I can say, find us on YouTube at youtube.com.
And if we get 100 subscribers, I promise we will talk about the viral video I once posted.
That's true.
That's true.
I'm trying to
Randy's got a million. What? How many views
like
do you think that has?
I still get shit like recently I've been getting comments on that shit. Like I get notifications of it where people are like, man, this was posted like 5 years ago and here I am in 2018 still watching. Somebody thanked me by name.
Damn.
On fucking YouTube. It's maybe the nicest YouTube comment section you will ever find. Not one person is saying horrible things, so it's great.
The video is cool and all, but I mean, I don't know. It didn't move me that much.
Section makes me believe in God.
I'm one of those people. Every now and then, I will specifically search for that video to watch it. So, like, I understand. I think not too long ago, maybe within the past like 6 months, I was like, I need to watch that damn video Randy posted.
And you want to if you subscribe to our bullshit on Straight Chilling's YouTube link.
You're catfishing Randy, aren't
find
you?
us.
This shit changed my life.
Find us and subscribe, please, and also watch us if you want. Well, instead of
if you want to see our faces.
I couldn't blame you if that wasn't appealing, but my God, please subscribe anyway.
Also, we mentioned previously that we weren't going to put the new $10 level Patreon up until January. So like the level where you can actually pick a movie for us to review. However, we have changed that. It is now live. So if you want to pick a movie for us to review between the months of January, February, and March of 2019, you can go ahead and subscribe to our $10 level on Patreon right now for that. There's only 5 spots open. One of them has actually already been taken. So there's 4 available.
Patreon.
I thought a couple of them have been taken.
No, just one for this coming season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm
just
getting
one.
my seasons mixed up.
So there are 4 spots available if you want to pick a movie for us to review before April of next year. Hop on it. Get them while they're hot.
And Lord knows they're hot.
Yeah, because
So
we did one. We're doing one this week, and then we've already got one scheduled, and it feels like the past month we've done a couple as well, right?
Yeah, we definitely have.
My God, that brownie does not have enough sugar. Who needs to amp up juice real quick?
Well, I'm trying. I'm pumping myself full of caffeine and sugar. Come on, guys.
Good man.
I spent 40 minutes talking about Cooters last night, drinking my sorrows away. Come on, give me a break here.
I'm sorry. You put the gun away afterwards, right?
Well, they don't have guns in Korea, so we're safe there.
Oh, well, there you go.
Finger guns only.
Pew pew.
Moving
forward,
the last bit of housekeeping. We got a lot of housekeeping. Last bit is a reminder. We're doing a Q&A section on our 200th episode. If you have a burning question regarding horror or anything else you'd like to ask any of us on the show, send that in to us on any one of our social media platforms, and we will make sure to answer that in our episode number 200, which is only a few weeks away. And that's it.
Get personal.
Yeah. Like awkwardly personal. That would be hilarious.
Get real personal.
Ask us why we've been so different since high school and shit. It'll be great.
Don't do
Where
that.
do you get off? That's my number one question.
I got an answer for you. You'll
Bergen, stop.
You'll have to tune in to episode number 200 to find out what it is.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, let's get into what we've been watching this week.
Hey gang, what you been watching?
Randy, what you been watching?
I've been watching quite a few things, but what I want to talk about is a little stop that I made yesterday, as a matter of fact, in a place called the Bearded Ladies Mystic Museum in sunny Burbank, California, in which they have an exhibit called Slashback Video. I almost forgot what it was called for a second. Despite buying merch, I somehow almost forgot. So this was an exhibit in what's basically it's like if Hot Topic was taking it real serious to this shop. If it's like it's like if Hot Topic was like, no, really, we're gonna have like a bunch of stuffed rats playing poker and put them in the wall and like all sorts of weird shit. It's pretty awesome. I fucking loved it personally. And they have a little museum area where they have a bunch of oddities like vintage Ouija boards and things like that. But they also have a temporary exhibit. It's the second time they've had it. It's the second iteration, basically of the same thing. But it's called Slashback Video, and it's basically like a reproduction, sort of pastiche on video stores and horror VHS. There are just racks and racks of VHS films, most of which are real and like movies that you might recognize or might not. It goes for everything from fucking Halloween 1 through whatever to like The Mutilator and fucking frogs and all sorts of shit that you might have seen on a video store wall if you're about our age or older. And it also has a bunch of fake artist rendered VHSs as well, like Stab, which is the movie for Scream. So in the movie Scream 2, they made a movie called Stab, which is about the events of Scream 1.
I want
that's
that
dope.
shit.
Yeah, that's really cool.
You can't buy it. And you can't actually touch it, which is a shame. But
you can't buy it?
Can't buy, a lot of that stuff, like almost everything in that museum section is just for viewing.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
But they had like a fucking dope ass Freddy as a TV with arms coming out, says welcome to prime time, bitch, on it. They had a Splatterhouse arcade cabinet, which is fucking great. They had an NES running Friday the 13th, the NES game, notoriously terrible game, in the corner, and just like every VHS you can possibly imagine. And they did have a few like vintage posters and stuff for sale as well. So check it out if you're in that area. I loved it. I also stopped in right down the street, because this is a magical street apparently in Burbank, where you can go to a Halloween store that is year round. And not only that, there are 3 buildings of this motherfucker. There's an entire, think about every Spirit of Halloween store you've ever been to, and that's one of them. And that's just costumes. There's one that's just costumes, and it's like fucking a deep ass building of that. Then you go to the kids section, which we didn't actually get to go into. It was not open when we were there, for whatever reason, which I assume is just like, a little bit less intense stuff going around. And then there's the main store, which is Like I was holding my chest, like having a joy heart attack. It was the best. There's like a room basically dedicated to the Haunted Mansion and shit. There's like oil paintings of Michael Myers and Beetlejuice and shit on the walls. There's every horror t-shirt you can imagine. They have they have it all, man. They have, I shared some pictures on the Slack if you guys want to check that out. It was Mecca, dude. It was great, and I can't recommend it enough. They had like everything, every Funko Pop that I'm not into that really personally, but like every collectible you couldn't imagine. They had Silent Night, Deadly Night action figures and shit. Like where the fuck else are you gonna get that? Save the internet, like, and also get to like be in it. Like it's just great. It's fucking awesome, and they have just every book you can imagine, and VHS cover books, like art books. I could go on. I could really go on and on about it. But yeah, Halloween Town is what it's called. And I highly recommend that as well. So yeah, that's really what I wanted to proselytize a little bit. I really wanted to put out into the world. If you have not heard of or been to these places and you are in those regions, please go. It's worth it.
Nice.
They need to start stocking some of Randy's new Straight Chillin' Halloween tees.
Yeah, I mean, the market's huge for that.
It
oh,
is.
we laugh.
Juice, what you been watching?
Rounding out the essentials list for the season, I watched Home Alone for Christmas, and I watched Silent Night, Deadly Night. Mm-hmm. And so covered those. Didn't watch 2. I don't know. I don't know if I can bring myself to watch it again.
Don't do it alone.
Tough sell on your own. Yeah.
That enigma. Maybe when I get into Jack's, maybe if me and Bob are hanging out or something,
you know
maybe we can.
Maybe you can watch it with the Korean students. Maybe they'd like
sure.
Maybe they'd like to watch a poorly edited sequel to a Killer Santa movie.
You get to explain to them what Garbage Day is.
No one would understand.
It's the movie. Yeah.
I'm also trying to brush up. We got our top 10 of 2018 list coming up, and there was like a couple of like Netflix horror movies that I want to check out, like that came out this year that we didn't really talk about, we didn't cover. So I watched one of them. I've got a couple more on my list, but I watched a movie called Apostle that was like a Netflix horror movie. It's like a cult kind of movie too, but it's got this kind of like supernatural thing to it as well. It's kind of like a better kind of Wicker Man, I guess. It's got that old timey kind of feel. Where,
what is it? This movie?
Apostle. It's called Apostle. Except people are it's like really set in like older times, so they're not just like dressing up. It's like, you know, kind of the setting, but I actually liked it pretty good. It was one of those movies though, as I was watching it, like I was really enjoying myself as I was watching it. I was texting like Bob and I was like, you know, why didn't we talk about this, or why haven't we covered it or whatever? I'm really enjoying this movie. But then it was one of those movies that when I got finished with it and I really like started kind of picking it apart myself, like thinking about it, it like kind of lost some of the enjoyment. Like the spectacle was good as I was watching it, but once it was finished and I had to like really think about it, I was like, yeah, okay. So, but overall, I still thought it was pretty solid. Like while I was watching it, it had like some cool kills and some cool characters, and kind of the mythos behind it was interesting. And I thought it was pretty good. A little long, but solid watch. So I'm trying to get through those so I can have a proper top 10 list for 2018. So yeah, Apostle. I think it was worth the watch though, for sure. Especially being on Netflix, you know, it's not costing you a trip to the theater or anything. True
that. I watched a few movies this week. Like I mentioned before, I've been blasting through Dread Central Presents catalog. So they put out like 10 movies this year. It's like a new Blu-ray imprint, basically. They're releasing all these independent horror movies. And they released like 3 double features. So the first double feature that I got through that was released by them had 2 movies, Nina Forever and Imitation Girl, on them. So like Nina Forever, I kind of thought was a comedy. Basically, the the plot of it. So this guy, his girlfriend dies. He meets a new girl. They start dating. Every time they have sex, his girlfriend, like in corpse state, just appears. Like she's covered in blood. It's like, it's very gruesome. And like kind of knowing the plot before going into it, I was like, this has to be a comedy, right? Because that's absurd. It's not a comedy at all. It is played straight as hell. There's just a fucking gruesome corpse that pops up every time you're trying to have sex. It's like brutal as fuck.
Damn.
Yeah, it's very much about like grief. This movie's just about like dealing with grief and loss, and it's kind of took me by surprise, but it was done in a way that had like a lot of heart to it, and it ends kind of on a down note, I guess. But it's totally worth watching. It's I'm looking at it on IMDb right now, and it's even listed as like comedy, drama, horror. I don't really get the comedy. Like maybe in the very beginning there's a couple jokes, but as soon as like the corpse comes up, man, it's just like heavy. It's heavy as hell. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed it, and I recommend watching it though. Imitation Girl. It's got what's her name? Lauren Ashley Carter. She plays two characters in this movie, so this is very much like Under the Skin, if you guys had seen that or remember that. It's like an alien basically crashes on Earth and comes across this porno magazine and takes the shape of the girl that's on the cover of the magazine, which is Lauren Ashley Carter. So you're following two characters throughout this movie. One of them being the alien that is trying to figure out how to use this new body and navigate Earth and how to be a human being and how to have a relationship. And on the other hand, you're following this porn star in like her day-to-day life and how she's dealing with obviously the complications of being a porn star and like dealing with that, and also dealing with like her personal relationship with her boyfriend and like them being on the rocks. And then eventually, of course, the two do meet. And this movie like sounds kind of heavy, but it's actually a lot of it is played for laughs. So like, you know, you're following a porn star for half the movie basically, but it's done very tastefully that you don't see people like banging it out really. And like anytime an awkward moment arises, it's totally played for laughs, and it's pulled off really well, like in a way that I feel like probably most movies wouldn't be able to pull off. I don't know. Tasteful is kind of the best word that I can find to describe it.
It's a very strange premise.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Movie.
It is. Yeah. I don't know. It's got a lot of heart to it as well, and I don't know. It had me laughing, and it had me intrigued throughout it, and it's also like shot very beautifully. There's a lot of like very lingering, wide shots, and they just kind of let you drink the scenery in. It's artfully done. I don't know. As far as the double feature goes, it worked really well. I thought. I recommend the hell out of it. Nina Forever and Imitation Girl. Check them out. Yeah,
I'll do it.
Do it. That's it. That's it for me. Let's go ahead and get into the main event. Talk about Jacob's Ladder. Start with the back of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
What's on the back of the box? The plot for Jacob's Ladder is as follows. Mourning his dead child, a haunted Vietnam War veteran attempts to uncover his past while suffering from a severe case of disassociation. To do so, he must decipher reality and life from his own dreams, delusions, and perceptions of death. 1990, released November 2nd of 1990, starring Tim Robbins, directed by Adrian Lin. Gentlemen, have we seen this movie prior, and would we recommend? Randy, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I saw this movie, God, I want to, like right out of high school maybe. Based on a suggestion of a friend or somebody, and yeah, I would recommend it for sure. It's not a barn burner, you know. This movie's a little bit of a thinker. It's got some really great visuals for you to like hang your hat on a little bit, but this toes the line between horror and thriller pretty hard. I would say there's no like slashery or campy aspects to it. But there is something interesting. It has something interesting to say sort of at its core. So for that reason, if you're looking for a movie that'll not really challenge you necessarily, but will give you something to chew on, you could do a lot worse than this movie. And it has a reputation of such. I would recommend it.
Cool. Juice, how about you?
Yeah, I'd never seen this movie and wasn't really aware of it, actually, but I am really eager to talk about it. I was just pulling up my notes. I know it always looks like I'm not paying attention when you guys are talking, but just looking at my phone notes. This is, I agree with Randy. It's kind of got that thriller kind of vibe. And it's really dark, but very interesting. And I'm really eager to talk about it. It's a real thinker. If you like war movies, if you like 90s movies, if you like thrillers, thriller kind of movies, this
you like
would
Culkin movies.
Yeah, Macaulay Culkin. Yeah. But it's heavy. It's not a light watch. And so you got to know that going in, you're going in like kind of for an experience, a real thinking kind of experience, something that you're going to chew on for a while, I think. So if you know that going in, I think you'll enjoy it. But just, be aware that it is, you got to kind of put your brain to it a little bit.
Yeah. This ain't a background watch.
Yeah.
No. You
kind of have to engage this movie. Randy, I think I watched this with you once prior in high school. The thing, like when on the rewatch though, the only scene that I know I remembered was the point where they go to the party and everybody starts dancing and something very specific happens during that dance scene. The rest of it though, I just did not recall whatsoever. So it was basically like a first time watch for me. I was very surprised by everything that happened, especially come the end of it. But I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It's I don't know. I like Tim Robbins a lot. I think he's a fucking phenomenal actor, and watching him throughout this whole movie, I was just like so enthralled by him. Like everything that happened to him, I was like right there with him. And it's also, yeah, I guess it's more of like a quote psychological thriller, but it's also like real life shit. Like some of this, obviously not all of us fought in Vietnam, but we're all like
just me.
That's right, Randy. You look very good for your age. Let me tell you.
Thanks, man.
Everybody deals with like loss and grief and whatnot in their own way, and like whatever happens in your own personal life, and that's something that everybody can connect to. And watching Tim Robbins go through these like very traumatizing events and trying to make peace with them, you connect with that. And he fucking kills it throughout this movie. I highly recommend it, man. It's not an easily digestible movie. You kind of have to be in the right headspace for it. It's a heavier watch, but I definitely recommend checking it out.
Just to put it in perspective for people who are on the fence about watching it, I would compare it to Videodrome.
Yeah.
So less body horror-y, but sort of in that realm of, there's a lot of metaphors flying around, a lot of like zany visuals, a lot of reality questioning, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
True chains. Here goes that spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning.
All right. Let's get into it. Matthew, what have you done to us?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to pick apart with this movie. I guess. I
was gonna say, should we just outline the events of the movie, like in a really brief way, so that we can talk about it, or how do you want to handle it? It's kind of tough to even break apart.
Yeah. Well, it is a little tough, except that the movie does start with this guy, and he's with his squad. They're in Vietnam. That's where it starts.
Nam Squad.
And Nam.
That was the original title.
And something happens, like they start taking fire. But at the same time, so some dudes I think are like getting shot and stuff. But at the same time, like some of the guys like start having seizures or like losing their minds as well.
Yeah, they're all eating. Like you open up and they're having like lunch or whatever, and it seems like as they're having lunch, they take fire, and some people start having like this terrible reaction to the food, or at least that's kind of what I took from the scene. Tim Robbins specifically says like, no, I'm not hungry. He doesn't eat anything, so he doesn't have that happen, but all of his like squad buddies start kind of freaking out. Some of them start like foaming at the mouth and stuff.
Yeah.
And it looks pretty gnarly. And then it kind of like cuts from there, and throughout the movie, he has flashes back to that night, and he's trying to kind of piece together what exactly happened. He doesn't remember. So we kind of discover it with him throughout the rest of the movie. But the majority of the movie is like him living in New York City. He is divorced. He had 2 kids with his wife. One of them passed away before he went to Vietnam. 3? Okay. So 2 still living.
2 still alive.
He had 2 rag kids and then 1 Culkin who died.
1 Culkin. 1 dead Culkin. The dead Culkin's band name.
I love that band name.
So he's like living in New York with a new girlfriend, and Jezebel, yeah. And while he's there, he kind of starts seeing these demons following him around, and he doesn't know why. He's trying to make sense of that, and as the movie goes, he kind of loses touch with reality more and more, and falls down this rabbit hole as he tries to figure out what happened in Vietnam and whether or not certain chemicals were developed and like experimented on him and his squadron. So you're just kind of trying to understand what happened in his past as he goes fucking nuts, you know.
Some weird things that like so he finds out, you know, he's not sure if he's crazy or not, but he finds out his other squad buddies are also experiencing these similar types of things. So
and they describe it as demons, like they're being pursued by what they call demons, and what we see as like sort of just. I don't know, like we see Tim Robbins get chased by some people in a car at one point, and like he almost gets mowed down. Yeah, he almost gets mowed down by some people in a car, one of which had like a big, like one of those slip-on masks that's just a nothing face, you know, one of those, and like we just sort of like seeing odd stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a Tool video where like their heads are all shaking all crazy.
Dude, I specifically wanted to mention that because that's like. For 90s movies, that's like a trope. That specific thing is a trope. So this movie came out in 1990, and I don't know of a movie before this that had that like fast-moving, spinny. I want to say
this movie originated that in terms of for popularized.
I was gonna ask like if you guys knew. I don't know specifically, but I know this is a very popular movie. People kind of know about it, and that happens several times in this movie. And I was like, oh, maybe that's where it came from. You know?
Maybe. I know
it might be. I don't
know when the Tool. I'm pretty sure it's like in the Tool Sober video. I don't know when that came out. Definitely early 90s. I don't think before then. So I don't know. That's specifically like what I was thinking, because I think they do it like several times in their videos. But that dark grittiness like of the 90s. That was like the thing.
Sober came out like in 1993. So this was before that.
Okay. Yeah. So this movie probably did. Yeah, make it popular.
This movie popularized a lot of specific tropes, but it like for a long time, I feel like it went under the radar in terms of like receiving the credit for it. That's just my general read. I don't know. Maybe I'm off by that, but it always seemed like having seen this movie earlier, like pretty early in my life, my horror movie watching life. Like I've seen a lot of movies that kind of borrow ideas from this, or that this movie also borrows ideas from other movies, so it goes circular like that. But this movie popularized quite a few things, and I think that is one of the probably prime examples of it. I can't also think of any other movie before this that really did anything like that, much less multiple times. And then on top of that, you also have some body horror stuff. You have some like gross penile tentacles and shit, and basically the lizard people. This is like a conspiracy theorist dream for a while, this movie. So it also covers, like you said, like there's government intrigue going on. There's all sorts of like danger in this movie all the time.
Yeah. Also this is all the time. So it must have been really like this, really terrible. But anytime I see a movie that's based in New York, like in the 70s, which I think this it looks like hell.
Yeah, it does.
Every movie,
subway.
like you talk about, like the Warriors and like stuff. I mean, it looks like the shittiest place every time, and I'm always like, thank
Taxi
Christ,
driver.
I didn't live in New York in the fucking 70s, because it always looks like fucking hell on earth.
The subway in particular, like having been to New York a number of times, like it's not like that anymore. Obviously, like we've all been there at most.
Yeah.
And it's they've done a good job with it, but in the 70s in particular, every movie you see, nobody gives a positive portrayal of the New York subway ever until the like 90s, late 90s probably. And it's because like there just didn't, for whatever reason, shit was not regulated very well, and shit was like everything was tagged, and there was just a lot more danger on the subway, and it's a lot cleaner and nicer.
Yeah. Even just like walking through the streets, like in this movie, like I feel a sense of dread when he's just like walking around. I'm like, oh shit,
Get
he's about to
inside,
get like
dude.
shanked or something. Yeah,
And you know,
it's like,
normally
oh
I
my
would chalk
God.
that up to like the musical score, but they're pretty sparse with this at first. Like the score isn't really like very heavy for a while, especially in scenes where it's just him meandering around. So it seems like it's just a naturally dangerous environment, even though we were jumping from fucking Vietnam during the and yet New York feels dangerous.
It's that pre-Giuliani New York, man. You can't fucking hang with that shit.
Yeah, that's what's in it. That's what changed.
That's worse than Nam. Worse than Nam.
Ooh.
Who's paying you, Rob?
It's also not he sometimes, well, I guess just one time. There's one time where he's also like very ill. One time he almost dies, where he's like going into shock because he's got a high fever.
Yeah.
And so they have to throw him in a bathtub full of ice. And while he's doing that, he also jumps over to like his life
Third
that you
reality.
think a third reality, a life that you think he has left behind, and it's with his now
Supposedly ex-wife.
ex-wife and their kids. But then Macaulay Culkin, the kid, is still alive, so he's still with his wife in their house. Their kids are all alive, and like they have discussions like, oh, you know, like you didn't pay me my allowance and stuff like that, you know. And so that's another reality between, because there's at least a couple of them. It's hard to pin down what is real in this movie. Always, you can't ever tell what is real, which is why I really like want to talk about it, especially because once you get to the end, it throws you like another kind of curveball. And I'm really...
Are you confused about it? I want to ask you about this. Like, are you trying to figure out what was real and what's not?
Yeah, because it gets to a point to where I'm like, okay, I mean, we can talk about it. So at the end, he's just dying in Vietnam. He dies in Vietnam.
Yeah.
He dies in Vietnam.
And he ascends a stairway with the Culkin.
Yeah, with the
undead
Culkin. But before we get there,
Another
like in his, I guess, main reality in New York, he gets to this point to where there's this guy who tells him there was kind of like this government conspiracy where the soldiers in his squad were like given this special test treatment to make them more aggressive, essentially, but it went really bad, and they essentially like killed each other. They attacked each other instead of attacking like the enemy. So I was like wondering, like, is all that just made up? And really, he's just dying in Vietnam, and everything we've seen up until this point is just his last moments in his mind dying in Vietnam. Because a lot of it, I don't know, like, doesn't...
That's a good question, actually.
Makes sense, or well, not necessarily makes sense. Like, I don't like. I couldn't figure out, like, was there really, like, did that happen and that's why he died, or is he just in a regular old war and somehow it's just all made up in his mind? I don't. It got really muddy there.
The way I took it was basically the first scene and the last scene factually happened. Everything else in between is like, you're watching what's happening in his mind as he's dying, as he's trying to make peace with letting go with his life and ascending. And some of it probably did happen. Some of it probably didn't. It's just him reconciling whatever
All kinds of
traumas he had going on in his life. Yeah.
I think that's probably true, and it's I can see your point though. I didn't really consider that. Where whether or not that was actually, whether or not the drugging of these troops actually happened. I think it did though, because there is specifically a scene where I think I take everything that happens in Vietnam on screen in Vietnam as reality. I take that as reality, and at one point you see him. He gets injured, and that's why he dies, and we see him injured from the beginning, but we don't see how he got injured exactly, and eventually it's revealed that he was stabbed by somebody he knew, like an American, and the American looks on with horror after he sees what he's done or whatever. So he's been killed basically by friendly fire. Now you could say that was because they were actually drugged, like he says, or you can say that his dying mind was grasping at anything he could to sort of explain the reason for his untimely demise, and he wants it to be an injustice that he can defeat, at least within the fantasy world that he's concocted. So I mean, you could take it either way, and it specifically also after the last scene of this movie, it shows some text that reads something along the lines of there were actual drug testing happening to troops. So during Vietnam, they did test people, and
it's a drug called BZ, a hallucinogenic drug. Thalidomide, I think. I don't know. No, I'm sorry. That's a different thing. I have some trivia about that. Here, I'll just go ahead and read it. So the closing legend of the film mentions the testing of a drug named BZ in Vietnam. BZ is NATO code for a hallucinogen called 3-quinaclidil benzylate. I definitely said that wrong, which was rumored to have been administered to U.S. troops during the Vietnam War in an attempt to increase their combat abilities. So that was drawn from what is, in some circles at least, believed to be a real event. Whether or not that speaks to how true it is for Jacob within the context of the story is the question, I guess, though. So it's definitely touching on that and with intention, but I don't know whether or not it holds water for Jacob in particular. That's really a question that's left dangling. And there's a lot of you can take a lot of things from this movie. This movie does not handhold people at all. When it shows him dying in Vietnam, that's about the closest you get to a hard answer for anything. Yeah. And I remember when watching it in high school, I didn't even take it as a hard answer then. At the time, it seemed sort of like, I was like, wait, so was that real? Or was the movie real? So the questioning of reality and all that stuff is the journey that the audience takes the whole time. Yeah. There's this one part in the movie where he goes to see a chiropractor who is his ex-wife's father. And the first time you're introduced to this character, his name's Louis, he's adjusting his back, and Tim Robbins kind of rolls over and looks up at me and he says, you look like an angel. And throughout the whole movie, he's talking about being chased by demons. Demons are coming after me. What do they want? Yada, yada, yada. Later in the movie, he goes back to the same guy. He actually busts him out of the hospital, and he's adjusting his back again. And this is, his angel or whatever. And he starts talking about Eckhart, which I guess is an author that I'm unfamiliar with because, I'm illiterate and whatnot. But he kind of quotes Eckhart, which is basically the central thesis of this movie, or that's how I took it anyways. He's talking about if you're frightened of dying, you're going to see devils tearing your life apart. But if you've made peace with your life, then you're going to see those devils as angels freeing you from the earth. So it's all how you look at it. It's your perspective is the only thing that changes, or it's the only thing that makes the difference between angels and devils, basically.
Yeah. I really liked this philosophical idea at the end, just because it was interesting, especially when it shows him at the end dying. The idea, I think at one point, I don't know if this is specifically what he says, but people that have it good, people who've got it good are in hell, essentially, because they don't want to let go what they've got. They fear death because their life is essentially like so good. And they see everything around them as demons, which is interesting for this guy because it kind of goes back and forth. He is being chased by demons, but it's an interesting reality too that he's like concocted for himself. Like if you're like, okay, this is all a dream. Mm-hmm. It's strange because he's like apart from his wife, and he's with this other woman who, you could always associate like, was this someone he maybe lusted after
right
in his real life? And it's kind of that reality of like, oh, like maybe like a guilty kind of conscience or something, because she really like sucks. She's really like pretty shitty, has like a girlfriend or whatever. But so I don't know, it's just really strange because you're like, yeah, he kind of has it good, except that he lives in a shitty New York apartment with this like kind of shitty girlfriend after he's divorced from his wife, who he still kind of loves. But then you're like, well, he's just dying, so that's what his mind is creating, maybe. But it's just so hard. Once you start pulling on a thread, you're like, okay, I'm following it. But then it's like it leads you to this knot of strings and you're like, right. Oh shit, like I don't actually know where it's going, and you have to like backtrack and like kind of try to pull on another thread, and the kind of same thing happens. Well, you kind of follow it along and you just hit this kind of big tangle of knots. That's how I like imagine it.
I mean, I see your point, but what you're describing is basically like two levels of the same story. Two superior levels to the surface. Like there's multiple, like there's at least two interpretations of the events shown on screen that you can take, and one of them is the last thoughts of a dying man with synapses firing and regrets flying and fear of hell and like all these things, regrets flying through your head. Or you could also chalk those up to a spiritual death as well. Like if you want to say that this is what happens this is basically judgment, whether or not you are able to let go of things is how you ascend to heaven, which is what happens to, or what you could interpret to be happening to him at the end of this movie, walking upstairs with his son, Culkin. Like you could associate that to a spiritual way of dying. This movie doesn't discriminate between the scientific death and spiritual death. In fact, it kind of embraces both simultaneously, which I think is a pretty strong thing to say about any movie, to be able, or to any story, to be able to toe that line in such a way that, I don't know, that you can interpret it both ways and neither are even remotely wrong. Those questions are left dangling because they're left dangling for all of us. Like there's the writers aren't making that call for us. They're just showing us how they interpret death to be as an experience. So I think it's pretty fucking great, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to know, but it's good. It's good to think on. Like I like talking about it and thinking on it. One thing I didn't personally like for the movie, and I guess maybe because it kind of made it so much harder to understand, I guess. But I didn't like the whole government conspiracy, like info dump, like, oh, it was this crazy drug that we gave you. It felt like towards the end, I just got too many twists. Like, oh, there's a twist, and there's really no way you could have known that you were given a drug. But then you get another twist, like almost immediately after that, like, oh, maybe you're just dying and none of this is real. So I was like, wait a second. I can only handle so many twists here, guys. Just give me the one twist.
I can see that complaint, but also like the tease of it being a government conspiracy. First of all, interpretation wise, you could say that is him casting about, like we said earlier, casting about for ideas as to why this thing is happening to him, why death is occurring to him in this sort of unjust and unwelcome way. Not that it's ever really welcome, but or you can also let's look at it and say, like, this is, in terms of filmmaking, this is what's keeping us engaged as an audience. You can't just throw like that hospital scene where he's literally being injected by a man with no eyes, and the guy's like, "Yeah, you died. You're in hell," and like
straight out of Hellraiser.
Yeah, exactly. Like this Hellraiser scene, like you can't just do that all the time with absolutely no. You can, but with no grounding, it leaves us nothing to tether ourselves to as an audience. So not only does it give him something to tether himself to in terms of, not wanting to die, but it gives us something to tether to in terms of giving us some sort of seemingly sensible solution to the problem that we as an audience are facing, which is what the hell is going on. So I guess it's a red herring for a while, you could say, and it serves its purpose in that we get to experience that red herring play out, and then it turns out not to matter because it is a red herring, but it's taken us through this journey, showing us all these different things that sort of culminate in that last scene. So I think, you could look at it a bunch of different ways, like everything in this movie.
Did you guys like how this was like a sneaky Christmas movie? Did you catch it?
Oh, I was because he said that the big thing was he said that the doctor died just about a month ago, right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Is that how you knew?
No, I knew because Santa Claus robbed Tim Robbins.
Oh, yeah.
Shit cracked me up. He gets
funny.
Abducted by like these, suit wearing dudes. Yeah, exactly. People working for the government, you assume anyways. And then they're driving down the road and they get in an altercation in the back seat, and Tim Robbins gets like thrown out of the car and he's laying in the street kind of fucked up. Santa Claus just takes his wallet.
Yeah, it's a fucking Salvation Army Santa Claus, and I was like, I've forgotten how that played out, or that had even happened from the first time I watched it. But I was like, I'll bet you money that at some point he's going to say that Santa Claus robbed him, and people are going to be like, "Oh, this guy, he's out of his fucking mind." This one,
he does.
If I wasn't right,
Yeah,
I liked it that we were covering it, and it was just like low key, Christmas time.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Happy accident, or maybe it was intentional.
So depressing.
Fucking Matthew, you knew.
Maybe,
you knew.
Probably.
Matthew, you know what's up. So yeah, I mean, there's like the central question of this movie. It's hard to talk about any one thing, but if we want to talk about scenes, what are your favorite like scenes from this movie in terms of like horror moments? Because like Rob's the dancing scene that you described,
it's
pretty
gotta
great.
be the party, yeah.
That party is fucking
because so much like happens.
Fears, specifically male fears of your girlfriend dancing with another dude and getting off like crazy. Like they're basically humping, and like that starts happening, and then he turns into a lizard person who skewers her through her, presumably from butthole to mouth, with his tail.
It's all one hole, anyways.
I can't. I mean, on a scale long enough, yes.
Have you guys seen a movie called Possession?
Possession.
Yes.
Remind me of it.
I don't think so.
It's got what's his face from Jurassic Park, Sam Neill. Sam Neill's in it. Anyways, this movie reminds me of that.
Oh, is that the one where the woman where it was wearing blue and has a full scale freak out with a jug of milk in a fucking tunnel? Do you know what I'm talking about?
In a subway tunnel, yeah.
Yes,
that's that movie.
A fucking New York subway tunnel. Yeah,
goes fucking nuts. If you like this movie, watch Possession. You'll fucking love it.
I do like Possession. Actually, it's pretty great.
Sorry, Juice. Did you have another scene you wanted to talk about? I kind of derailed.
Oh no, I don't think so. As far as like horror goes, I mean, I can't remember. I mean, there's a couple times where he's like running from like the car, like we had mentioned, and somebody in like the seat has a fucked up face, and also where he almost gets hit maybe by like a subway car, and there are people who are fucked up on that, and he sees somebody on the subway who's like got a tentacle thing. But I mean, really the party scene, because that's where you get like the crazy head shaking as well, and then so I mean, that's really like the most horror aspect of this to me that I remember.
Yeah, the second one that kind of stuck with me, which was a little more like straightforward, was the scene where they're forcing him into the freezing cold tub and like dumping ice all over him. And he's got all these people holding him down. It's pretty. It's like torturous.
Yeah.
That, and then the Hellraiser scene where he's like being wheeled through this hospital, this like hellscape of a hospital.
Yeah, that's true. That and the dance are like the only two scenes that I can think of that are overt and like actively horror, and not just and couldn't be felt more as an action sequence or a eerie moment. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of like eerie visuals that sort of a la The Shining, where you'll see something sort of like strange in a crowd or something like that, and it just adds to this tone of eerie foreboding. But there's only a couple of moments where it's really overt like that. It's those things, and then like the beginning, which like him getting stabbed and like basically people dying in war, which is its own horror. All it's like,
yeah.
So I mean, this movie kind of touches on like a lot of shit. Life and death, fucking war and politics, grief,
divorce,
family matters, divorce, yeah, all sorts of shit. This movie goes really big in conceptual scope by telling a really singular story, which is pretty admirable, I think.
Yeah, that ending is like, so like big twisty endings where you find out like someone was dead the whole movie. Obviously, The Sixth Sense like pulled it off well.
Fuck that all up.
yeah, it did. It pulled it off well, but this came out before that, of course. But that's it. Almost seems like a cop out now. Like to see a movie with that kind of twist of an ending feels like a cop out now. However, watching this movie like essentially for the first time, I did not feel that way at all about it. It was almost like the ultimate mic drop of an ending for me. Like, you know, because you're following this dude grasping at straws, trying to make sense of like what's happening. And until that ending, I was like, okay, so what I'm taking from this movie is like hell on earth is being totally consumed by your past, by things that have happened in your past. Because he's totally hung up on, you know, his divorce, losing his child, horrific things that he went through in Vietnam, and his inability to cope with all of that is ruining his current relationship and is keeping him from moving forward in his personal life. And then this ending happens, and I was like, oh, no, all that's wrong. He's just dying, and he's having trouble leaving his life, his body, the earth. And like it just kind of like totally spun the meaning of the movie for me in an instant. And it did it like in a very effective, meaningful way that I did not see coming whatsoever. And it didn't feel cheap. It felt like completely earned. Whereas like movies don't always pull that off. You know what I'm saying? It feels cheap a lot of times.
I'm trying to think of a bad example of that trope. I'm going to try and look one up.
The Village.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Like big twist where it was dead the whole time. There's not a lot of movies that do pull that off. And usually the reason ones that do, which I think I agree that The Sixth Sense. I was saying that I think that The Sixth Sense does pull that off, so does this. And I think the reason that it pulls it off is because that's what the movie's about. The movie's about dealing with the issues in your life as you're dying, or as, you know, like unfinished business, as it were, and all things like that. Whereas there are some movies that just sort of use it as a way of, like, you could say like Wizard of Oz, like look at Wizard of Oz. Like, it doesn't do it badly necessarily, but the point of that story is whimsy. It's not really anything else, at least in the movie form. So but that's off the table here. This is about a meditation on life and death and suffering. So, you know, for them to then say, yeah, all of this was happening as he died. No wonder he was suffering so much. He was grappling with his whole life. This is the whole life flashing before your eyes moment. Mm-hmm.
And I guess that was kind of the problem I had with the twist. I didn't necessarily mind the idea that he was dead the whole time, because I like the idea, the philosophical idea that they proposed in there that made it worth it for me, because I was like, oh God, like, you know, when you're dying, that's kind of like the difference between heaven and hell, is like how your like body kind of reacts. So you're either like, it's like a bad trip. You're either like, you either have a good trip, like you give yourself to it, or you're fighting it and it's hell. But the problem I guess I have with that, I like that philosophical idea. But I guess the problem I have with this movie is not the fact that he's dying, but of the reality that he creates because of it. Like what I've been watching for the past like hour and 45 minutes, this is like a 2-hour movie, I think, is a reality that doesn't really match that. Because if the idea is like you don't want to let go of the things that matter to you, why wouldn't he be like, why would he imagine himself in a future where he can see like his friends are all old and he like lives in this shitty apartment with this shitty girlfriend where he's divorced from his wife, like things that you assume have never happened because he's in Vietnam, so he should still be with his wife, according to like the story that we're fed, like from the future. So you're like if he's dying in Vietnam, why is this his reality? Why is he an older guy? Because I like some of the little hints that they give you, like he's this like ladies man, like all the chicks dig on him at work or on the street, like when he's walking home, he's always just like this ladies man. I think that's hilarious, like as an idea that like you're dying and like that's how you kind of see yourself or whatever. Like that's really funny. But it's like, why would he be in this reality where he's a postman with depression, and so much so that he's got a shitty job because apparently he's super smart. Like his father-in-law says like, oh, you're like wasting your talents like at this job. And he's like, it's the only like it doesn't require me to think. Like, why would that be his reality that he can't let go of as he's dying? Why has he created this hell of a future for himself?
Well, what is your alternative? Because he's got to have something to let go of, and part of letting go is acknowledging that you can't change the past.
I know, but if you take it as he's in Vietnam the whole time, right? He's dying. This is part of his like hell on earth or whatever. Like, why wouldn't he the thing that would be hard to let go of, the reality to me was more of when he gets thrown in the bathtub and he's with his wife and kids. Right. Like we see him, he's with his wife in their bed. He's with their kids. Macaulay Culkin's still alive. That would be the thing that would make sense to not want to let go of. But instead, I see what you mean.
So maybe it's less him imagining that for himself, and it's more so the whole like central conceit of this movie that we mentioned before is like, you know, if you haven't made peace with your life, you're gonna see like demons tearing it apart or tearing it away from you, basically. So that's sort of like the future of him being divorced from his wife, his kid being dead, him living in this shitty apartment with his girlfriend that's not so great. Like that is sort of like the manifestation of I guess the angels trying to pull him from his body, but they're appearing as demons. Like his girlfriend in the movie does appear as a demon eventually. Yeah. So that's sort of just like the manifestation of the angels trying to pull him from his body. And then eventually, as he kind of goes through the movie and somehow or another begins to make peace with it, even though I don't really know that he does, but he eventually does see his son appear as an angel, and they ascend the staircase, and you believe that that's him making peace with it and moving on to heaven. So
that's the thing.
Less of him imagining it for himself, I think.
Yeah, I think that what you're describing, Justin, you're describing it as he's supposed to let go, but he's supposed to let go of his regrets. He's supposed to let go of the things that he can't change. Like he's making peace. Like Rob said, he's making peace. You don't make peace with things that you like about your life. You make peace with things that you don't like about your life. Mistakes you made, grief that you had to deal with, horrible things you've seen. Like, yeah, I can see what you mean. Like if the idea is that these demons are trying to trap him, then yeah, they would create a false, perfect reality for him. But I don't think it's that. I think it's his test of, okay, well, these things are haunting you. Can you have a peaceful death? Can you move to this next rung knowing that all this happened and knowing that you'll never be able to change any of it? And the only thing you can do is step away from it, take a breath, and know that it's your last, and know that what comes next is whatever you make of it, because it's your last moments. And whether or not you're spiritual, that's the question, one of the lingering questions, like I said. But I think that's what it's dealing with. It's not letting go of the things you like about your life. It's letting go about the things you don't like about life.
But I know, but the thing is though, if he's dying in Vietnam, then he never divorced his wife. He never had Jezebel's girlfriend. He never lived in a shitty apartment. He never got old and was depressed. He never, saw his friends also get depressed and die or kill themselves and stuff like that. So it's a weird thing to say, like, I'm dying. I'm going to imagine this shitty future for me. If the whole point is you have to let go, which is kind of the philosophical thing that, like, he's saying you have a good life. You don't want to let it go. You have a wife and you have kids, and so this is your hellscape. But we only see them together for such a short bit. So I don't like when I'm imagining him letting go, I'm like, well, you got a shitty girlfriend. That sucks. Let her go. Like, you got the shitty apartment. That sucks. Like, you got the shitty job. It seems easiser to let all that stuff go.
But he's not letting go of those things. He's not struggling.
Hour and a half.
He's struggling to let go of his grief, not struggling to let go. And he creates this false future for himself because, like I said, you can't change the things that have happened in the past. So as he's dying, he's imagining this future where all the things that he's done wrong, all the horrible things that have happened to him, all the things that he can't let go of still exist, and they're actually manifested even harder because he's now divorced from his wife because of the child loss. He is dating this woman who is trying to get him to forget that those people ever existed, which I don't think is the point at all, obviously, because he goes to heaven with his son, or goes to heaven, whatever. He finds peace with his son at the end. Like, I think that this whole thing is a manifestation of hell, and it's meant to sort of keep him cycling through it. The way that he breaks out of it is by, like, coming to grip with those things that he can't change, the things that existed in his life before and are now manifested through this false future reality that is more terrifying and more informed by his mistakes than it is by his successes and his happiness. He has to get through his fear to get to the other side of death, which is peace. Yeah. So I think that's really where it's going personally. I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
I like that we all have, like, different interpretations of this.
Yeah, it's very, like, it's a lot to chew on, and it's hard to digest. Like, it's a lot to get through. Like I said, when I think about this movie, like, the manifestation I have is just like following the thread and getting to a big tangle of knots and then trying to pick apart another one. That I don't know why. It's just that's how I associate it, like,
you're
visually in my
do
mind.
That. Like, I think exploring, like, different avenues of this is like always, like, any movie you have where you're able to sort of, like, parse it in entirely different ways that all use the same supporting evidence. That's incredible. Like, to be able to do that. Have you guys heard of a short film called An Occurrence on Owl Creek Bridge?
No.
I want to bring this up. So this is, I don't remember the details of it, but it's a much older movie. It was like a huge deal in its day. And I believe it might have been a Twilight Zone episode as well, recreated on a Twilight Zone episode, something like that. I can't remember, to be honest, the specifics of it. I just know the story, and I've seen it years ago. But this movie takes a central conceit from that. And it's another one of those things where it's like an extreme... influential story. It's an extremely influential story that has been extrapolated in these other pieces of medium. And basically the thing that it borrows, that Jacob's Ladder borrows, is the idea that the entirety of the movie, from the first scene, after the first scene and sandwiched by the end scene, happens within the mind of a dying man, or a man who's being put to death. In that story, it's I believe the Civil War, or maybe the Revolutionary War, where some war criminals did something and were captured, and they're on Owl Creek Bridge about to be hung by the neck, and this guy, he's about to be hung, and I forget how, but he manages to, like, escape downriver, and he fights his way out, and he's like, a lot of the tension in the movie is him trying to, find his way to safety, and he sort of does. And then once things sort of, like, settle down and everything's coming, he's like, everything's calming down. He's like, okay, well, I've survived. I'm gonna have a good life now, or something like that. It cuts to his neck snapping from the fucking noose. So you can see obviously there's a parallel there. There's a key difference in that it doesn't really deal with the philosophy, and you could much easier take that movie or that story as being the castings of a man who's about to be put to death. Just whatever fantasy will put you at ease as you're about to die. You could put that on this movie as well, but I think there's more to it, especially from the philosophy angle. It's pretty direct with some of the philosophy in this. But I wanted to bring it up because it's often mentioned in respect to this movie, and like I said, that story has been, or that trope has been used and reused a dozen times. There's one movie in particular that I love, but I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's seen it. So, or who hasn't seen it. So it's kind of tough. I really want to recommend it, but I can't without spoiling it. So
recommend it in like 3 weeks.
I'm gonna have to.
What you been watching?
In fact, I may have in the past brought it up, but I can't remember, and I just feel sad that I can't bring it up. I'm sure that there's a few people listening that might know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's a more recent 80s movie that sort of followed, or not more recent, excuse me, a little earlier 80s movie that's a little more whimsical than this, but still sort of uses a similar idea. Yeah, if you guess what it is, private message me on Slack.
Slide into Randy's DMs.
Do it.
So
I promise I'll only be so crass.
Let's go ahead and rate this thing. Randy, out of 5, how do you feel about Jacob's Ladder?
I actually like having not seen this movie since I was in my teens. I remembered liking it, but feeling kind of vexed by it and kind of like, I don't know what to make of it, and I don't know how to talk about it. And having watched it again, the second viewing really helped solidify some ideas for me. I like this movie a lot better having seen it twice now, and I would happily see it again. I'm so glad that it was brought up in this movie. I thought about recommending it for the cast before, but never have. Yeah, I think with like I've railed on, or I've brought up all the things I like about this movie. As far as things I don't like, there are very few. And the things that I don't like could very easily be justified in one way or the other. I can't even really think of an example right now because I'm so high on the movie right now. I think I'm going to give it a 5, and I'll let the regret fall where it may if I turn out not to like it so much later. I'm pretty sure I love this movie though.
Wow.
Deal. Juice, out of 5, how do you feel?
I'm going to give it I'm going to go with the 3-star, but plus half star for the Yabos, of course. So 3.5 is going to be the total for me. Man's got to have a code, got to stick to it, got to stay true. But as far as my just regular minus the Yabos, is the regular 3-star, I thought it was a well acted movie. Part of the aesthetic is just not for me personally. So I've actually mentioned this fairly recently because we talked about Overlord, where I just really enjoy films set during World War II. I just think like the whole setting is fascinating, everything about it. The opposite is true for Vietnam Wars. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, the whole like climate of, the back home and the kind of the betrayal of the troops and the whole purpose of the war. And just like, it just gives me this like negative vibe for any kind of media that's associated with, like, anytime I have to think of the Vietnam War, it's always just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Like, I don't know. It's like the opposite.
It's just you, man. Everybody else is.
Well, no, I'm just saying where it's like we had talked about with World War II. It was like, it's always like, yeah, fuck the Nazis, like it's always, you're like, yeah, it's easy to root for. Plus, it's like the old timiness of it and just the setting. But Vietnam, it's like the exact opposite. I don't know. So there's that playing into it. And also just the 70s vibe. I'm not a big, like, the whole New York in the 70s. It just looks like shit.
Grimy ass New York.
Yeah, which it's effective for this movie, but it's still like watching it. It's not like we were talking about last week where The Shining is just so beautiful to watch. This is like the opposite to me. Like, it's effective for the story they're trying to tell, but I hate to look at it. It's gross and it just looks miserable and makes me like feel bad. So some of those are just like personal taste that kind of weigh the movie down a little bit for me. Like I said before, I didn't really care for the whole like chemical thing, especially when I had to think about like, was that even real and how did that play into like his reality and kind of float with that? Because it was like a twist upon a twist, and it was just, it put me off a little bit. However, the acting in this movie is fantastic. The philosophical questions and thoughts that it kind of brings up were really intriguing to me. Just thinking about it and chewing on it, I would like to watch it again, just to kind of pick up on other things and kind of focus on some of these things now that I know kind of what's going on. So it's got, you know, like a rewatch appeal to me, but, so yeah, I'll end it at a 3.5.
Cool. I'm going to give it a 4.5. I pretty much like everything about this movie. The only negative that I have really is like, given like that sort of a quote that's referenced twice in the movie that really seems to be kind of driven home, especially towards the end when they revisit it. The one part of the movie that doesn't seem to fit into that is the whole rabbit hole of him trying to figure out like what happened in Vietnam, and then coming to find out that there was this drug that was used to experiment on him and his platoon, and they all ended up like killing each other. It just didn't fit the whole like, you know, angels appearing to him as demons, because like when all of his like platoon buddies come into the picture, they're just kind of normal dudes and they're like, yeah, we're seeing the same shit, and then they just kind of disappear. And then that other dude comes in, he's like, yeah, I developed this drug, and yeah, we absolutely did use it on you and your friends, and it made you kind of turn crazy and kill each other. But like, none of these people ever appeared to him as like demons. They never seemed to be trying to rip his like old life away from him and like forcing him into a new one. It didn't really like fit that whole thesis statement as far as I understood it anyways. I don't know, maybe I'm just like missing something. That's totally possible, but it didn't seem to fit the rest of the movie for me. Other than that, this movie's fucking great, man. It's highly debatable as to what you take from it, what you want to make from it. The acting is incredible. It's awesome, man. It's definitely something that you can rewatch. You can probably get more from it on another watch. Highly recommend. Our aggregate is going to be a 4.3. Let's go ahead and get into our Rotten Tomatoes segment and see what the critics and users have to say.
Certified fresh to death.
Juice, take it away.
Right before I get into our Rotten Tomatoes segment, I had a note that I just didn't mention in our review, but George Costanza's in this movie.
That's right, lawyer ass.
And as a lawyer, and I just have this note that George's balding is nuts. His poor hair in this movie, man, it's just like, oh man, that's
George pattern baldness.
Oh,
it's the summer
rough.
of George.
Oh.
It's
But
rough.
yes.
It just made me feel bad for that man. But
He does a good job.
He
Yeah.
does. He does.
It's something
Yeah,
you
no,
sometimes
he
forget having like him so much be George.
This is-
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is the second movie we have reviewed this year with fucking Costanza in it,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah,
the other
it
one?
is. You weren't on it, Randy. It was The Burning.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was in that. I
Justin's
forgot about
favorite
that.
movie of the year that we
I
talked
haven't seen
about.
that in years though.
What a waste of a pick, Bob. All right, let's get into our Rotten Tomatoes. It's a decent sample size, but surprisingly, with the reviews that are counted, which is 61, so 61 critics, which isn't bad for an older 90s movie, but there's no critic consensus, which is strange. Out of 61, that's decent enough. But so there's no critic consensus, but we do have 61 reviews counted. So let's go around the table. Who do I always pick first? I don't know. I try to switch it up. Rob, go first.
Okay. I feel like critics would probably love this fucking movie. It's a little fart sniffy, It's a little
little bit.
I'm gonna go high with a 92.
92. Okay. Randy, what you got?
I also think the critics love this. Fart sniffy, I feel, is a little unfair, but
No, that's
I could see people interpreting it as pretentious, but I don't really see it myself. You can't tell big stories without taking big swings. So,
Big dick swinging.
big dick swinging. I think this movie probably got pretty good reviews. I'm going with, I don't know. I'm going to go with 90.
90. Okay. Randy's going to take it. Nobody's really that close, though. Boys,
Oh, wow.
we it's not certified, not officially
Wow.
certified. It is fresh. It is fresh. It's sitting at a delightful 69.
Shut up. You have got to be kidding.
Well, I
Of
was
this-
mad, but now I'm not anymore.
Of the 61 reviews counted, 42 are fresh, 19 are rotten with an average rating of 6.5 out of 10. But the tomato score is a wonderful 69.
Can you
69.
look at some of the negatives? I want to hear what critics
That's-
didn't like.
That's why Matthew picked this movie. Right there. He knew it at a
Probably. He just is
69%.
like, oh. All right. So top critic negative. There's two of them. I haven't read through these, so I don't know if they're actually good or not. But let's see. This one, in the best puzzle movies, the pieces fit eventually. But if you try to piece together Jacob's Ladder, all you get for your trouble is more pieces. That's one of them.
Somebody
So, yeah,
doesn't like
okay.
ambiguous endings.
Well, another one. This one's a little more lengthy, but another top critic from the Orlando Sentinel, so closer to home. That guy was
Whoa.
from L.A., Randy. But without talking about fart sniffy, without a strongly sympathetic figure at the center of the movie, Jacob's plight seems very remote. Watching this film should feel like being caught in a nightmare, but it feels more like watching someone else who is caught in a nightmare. Interesting.
Okay. I don't know why they don't think Tim Robbins is relatable. I don't get that.
I kind of get. I don't agree that he doesn't feel relatable, but it's still to me. What I'm kind of taking from that is again I feel like part of it is you expect or you think it's going to, once you know all that's going on, you expect it to maybe pull more on your heartstrings. But for me, when I found out he was dead, because what they showed me of his life, it wasn't him with his kids. It wasn't him with his wife. It was all shit. So when he dies, I'm like, one, a little confused because I gotta think about like that wasn't really his life, but I'm like, well, good. Like, because ultimately he goes like with his child, whereas like if it were played the other way, it would pull a lot more on your heartstrings. Like these are the actual things he's leaving behind. He's leaving behind two other kids that he really loves, even though he's lost one, and a wife that he really loves. But instead you're shown this like shitty landscape of depression and regret and guilt. And so when he ultimately leaves, then yeah, you're like, well, okay, good. Like, I don't know. So I kind of understand.
I guess I really don't see it that way, but I don't want to harp on it more than I already have.
Yeah. So I understand that. But so let's see what the people think about it though. So 69 from the critics, not officially certified, but it is fresh. User ratings 52,930, so almost 53,000. Bob went first last time, so Randy, take us away.
This is kind of a toss up. I'm going to say 69.
You'll straight chillin' special.
It's
Rob,
the auto pick.
yeah, Rob, where are you gonna go?
I'm going to go with a 75.
75. Bob is gonna take it. It is 84%. An average rating of 3.7 out of 5, which is very, very close to your boy Soju Stain's pick, man of the people and all that. So 3.7 out of 5. Damn it. Always trying to get that "oh God" from Bob, but never know when it's actually.
You gotta earn that shit.
You could see it was there, like shaking the head and all, but just couldn't.
You gotta try harder.
But yeah, so overall though, this movie is positive, which is good, because I still think it's a good movie. And so yeah, that's our Rotten Tomatoes segment, folks.
Nice. Let's go ahead before we get into trivia. Let's talk about the Cooter of the week.
Cooter of the week.
Juice, do we have a definitive Cooter of the week?
Cooter of the week. I don't know. His girlfriend really sucks. I'm trying to go through my mind now and see if she hits enough of the points.
She kind of sucks, but she's not like the worst human being.
She's not, because she goes back and forth. Like sometimes she's really helpful and nice, and then other times she's really
for starters.
However, she
within the
burns.
Yeah, that was
pictures of his children, his dead child. She burns them.
That to me really solidified the whole thesis statement of the movie. Like that is like a manifestation of angels trying to take him from his life that he hasn't reconciled with.
Yeah.
Thus they're appearing as demons. She appears as a demon because he's not. He hasn't made peace with it.
But in the time, as a character, you're like, fuck that bitch.
Absolutely. You're like,
I think
soulless motherfucker. Yeah.
I think like that to me is the only like truly fucked up thing that she does, except for maybe dance up on a lizard man. But
little sexual deviancy there, she's great. She's getting grind on a little bit.
She was doing more than grinding.
It's kind of
there's a couple more times like he goes to like after he has this episode where he almost dies, where she does save his life, but she like still is treating him like shit. Like you're just gonna lay around the apartment and it's been like a week or some shit.
Because she's making his meals, she's doing everything for him. It's been like 3 weeks, and he's clearly
and he does freak out. He freaks out on her again in that scene.
Yeah,
she looks
he
like
is
a demon.
completely dismissive of her through that whole scene. So I mean, that to me, like, that's not great, but I think she has a reason to grind an axe at that point. She just should never fucking touch another man's family photos. That's crazy.
Yeah. They're just there wasn't enough characters that we spent a lot outside of him and her. There wasn't a lot of people we spent a lot of time with. Like George comes in, but he's very brief.
Yeah.
And the extra like platoon guys, they come in, they're super brief.
What about
the doctors?
Culkin Cooter?
Culkin.
He was so young. He popped up, and I was like,
"It's the same year that Home Alone came out."
Is it
90? Right?
90.
No. Home Alone came out 93?
Oh,
I thought it was 1990.
Let me look. This definitely came out in 1990.
Yeah. Oh, I thought Home Alone was a little older than that.
November 1990.
Yeah.
Really? Wow. Okay. Well, I would say he did a much, much, much better job in Home Alone. And this, he like the lines. He doesn't do much, but the lines he like delivers were like.
Home Alone came out 2 weeks after Jacob's Ladder came out.
Wow.
2 weeks.
Some breakneck turnabouts in that year.
Holy shit!
In the dough. But
I don't know. Maybe I would. Can I nominate for Cooter of the Week a guy whose head shakes really fast?
What is your basis, Randy? He's got to hit at least 2 points on the scale.
I think he's got a gimp mask going, and he's only there to freak out Jacob. I think that lands a couple spots. He's a figment of a man's imagination, which doesn't work for him. But if we got to pick somebody, he's at the top of my most wanted list.
Also, like, what kind of party is this? There's like a fortune teller there. Club. There's a lizard man.
It's a fantasy dance club.
And somebody's like a bum ass New York apartment.
That sounds like a dope ass fucking Halloween party. Is what it sounds like.
I'd go. Grind on me, Christmas. Lizard man.
I guess.
Okay, so maybe there's no definitive Cooter for this movie. I
don't think so. The closest one to me was the girlfriend Jezebel, just because she's kind of shady. But I don't think she hits enough on 2 of the points. You got to hit at least like I don't know. At least
gotta have
close
a
to
clear bell
50%. Yeah, you gotta at least be like, oh, they were clear sexual deviancy and they manipulate a little bit or something. You can't just a little bit of
some light manipulation.
I mean,
This is a classy ass movie. No Cooter.
Yeah.
just Yabos.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, decent amount of Yabos.
True stains. Let's go ahead and get into some trivia.
It's totally time for trivia.
Take it away, Randy.
All right, hold on to your quickly shaking heads because there's a lot of trivia here. I have quite a bit, and a lot of it's pretty interesting. Let's start with stuff that was... I'm just going to read through these two things. First, things that were released via trailer, but were cut from the film, basically deleted scenes. So here's a list of a few of them. A disfigured man attacks Jacob with a knife. This scene was originally at the beginning where after he is almost run over by the subway train, Jacob goes to a men's room where he finds one man raping another while a second one pulls a knife on him. Scared, Jacob then escapes from the subway. Next. Damn. Yeah, that's pretty fucking crazy. They filmed that shit. Jacob is sitting in his mail van and reads a book when suddenly he sees a bag of mail starting to move. Originally, in this scene, some homeless man was sleeping inside the van, and when Jacob finds him, he takes him out of the van and gives him some money. Also cut, Jacob and Jezzy's sex scene. It says Jezzy instead of Jezebel, which I find Jezzy. Extra line from Frank when he's talking to Jacob on the phone. I believe Frank is one of his army buddies. He says, quote, maybe the demons are real. A longer version of the hospital from hell scene where while he is on the gurney pushed through the same hallway, Jacob asks, where are you taking me? Where am I? Deleted antidote scene, which is available on special edition DVD and Blu-ray. In this scene, Michael gives Jacob antidote, which causes Jacob to start to hallucinate blood dripping on him and a monster crashing through the ceiling. While theatrical trailer also lasts for that, the theatrical trailer shows a shot of Jacob screaming, "Who are you?" from Jezebel's transformation scene. The teaser trailer shows an alternate version of the scene where Jezebel's face is getting disfigured by her turning into a different looking demon than the deleted scene. And now here's some scenes that were completely cut from the script. These, I think are really interesting. During the dance scene, at one point, all of the dancers are supposed to turn into demons. Also, during one of his Vietnam flashbacks, Jacob has a vision of a, quote, celestial staircase accompanied by heavenly music. And I'm going to get back to that in a minute, the celestial staircase. According to the original script, after Jacob is nearly run over by the subway train, a sequence involving a man... Oh, wait, this is the man being raped again. Sorry.
Cool.
Man being raped. We don't have to go back into that. Jacob watches a reverend on TV who rants about the world coming to an end. Jacob sees an image of a demon on a wall, in the wall of his living room, which, when he looks closely at it, becomes a portal to hell. A scene following the antidote sequence in which the ceiling explodes and Jacob is surrounded by a vision of heaven. And then finally, a different ending where Jezebel turns herself inside out and transforms into a huge demon, which Jacob has to fight before ascending to heaven.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So wait, that was just they did film that or no?
No, those last few were just written. And let me explain some of that. Some more. So this movie was okay. I'll read here. In Bruce Joel Rubin's original screenplay, all of the demons who appear throughout the film were typical biblical demons with horns, wings, cloven hooves, etc. Director Adrian Lyne felt like this kind of imagery could very easily come across as comic, which would destroy the film. He felt that the fact that the imagery was so far from human lessened its impact, and as such, he decided he wanted the demons to be human-esque, but not quite human. During his research into this, which was then he discovered the photography of Joel Peter Witkin, Lynn came across the thalidomide scandal. Thalidomide scandal. Thalidomide was a drug made available for purchase from 1957 to 1961, ostensibly designed to treat pregnant women, primarily as an anti-emetic. I don't know what word means, to combat morning sickness, and secondarily as a sleeping aid. However, prior to its release, inadequate clinical tests were carried out, leading to roughly 10,000 children in Africa and Europe being born with severe physical deformities because their mothers had taken thalidomide during their pregnancy. The most common defects were phosomelia, dysamelia, amelia, and polymelia, all conditions which affect the appearance of the limbs. During his research, Lynn studied the thalidomide case and came to feel that the birth defects caused by the drug represented the perfect starting place for his redesign of Rubin's demons. The thalidomide scandal is also the interpretation for David Cronenberg's Scanners. So that's a lot to take in. But yeah, so there was a much stronger connection to the biblical story of Jacob's Ladder in the writing stages of this. But they diminished that as an attempt to make it more or less sort of hokey, or less in danger of being seen as hokey by, but I mean,
if he fought a fucking demon, like that'd be a little much.
I mean, you think about it, like Hellraiser does exactly that. Like it just goes straight for demons. Like it's not like biblical demons, but they are clearly out of this world fucking demons, and not just people with crazy contacts and gnarly teeth. So like, there's another way you could go with it, but I personally like that this movie went a different route. I like the movie. I like the way it did, the direction it did take.
Yeah, I think they made the right choices based on what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it seems like it plays better as a is this guy insane sort of red herring thing. Like, is this guy just losing his mind and seeing things, or what? I think it plays into that quite well. Yeah. According to writer Bruce Joel Rubin, the script was heavily inspired by the Bardo Thodol, which is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the biblical story of Jacob's Ladder, and Robert Enrico's Oscar-winning short film An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, 1961.
Randy.
Which is also based on the 1890 Ambrose Pierce short story. So, so like we talked about An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. I don't know much about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but I feel like some of that stuff that the chiropractor was talking about probably was directly from that. Yeah, I don't know that for fact. But we haven't actually talked about Jacob's Ladder, the biblical story yet. Do either of you guys know anything about that?
No, I'm a heathen.
No, actually, no.
So I only know a little bit from Wikipedia. I'm no scholar in this regard, but just as a brief synopsis, as I understand it, so the story of Jacob is such that Jacob was, I believe, the second son in a Jewish family, and he stole his birthright from his brother Esau. Yeah, basically the inheritance from his parents, and like stole away to the wilderness and was sleeping in the wilderness after having escaped that, when he had a vision of a staircase or ladder ascending up into the sky with a bunch of angels hanging on it or standing on it. And later on, he's approached directly by God, and God tells him that the ladder is... Yep. He's basically like, this is the way to salvation. Oh, hi.
There you go.
The literally stopped at the ladder is.
Well, we're going to leave it there.
Waiting.
What's the ladder?
God tells Jacob that the ladder is, in effect, him, God. And that basically it's salvation, like God is salvation sort of thing. And it turns... Jacob then turns on a dime and starts praising God and is like, says something along the lines of, "Hey, if you'll keep me fed and clothed, I'm your man. I'll follow you to the ends of the earth," that sort of thing. And he basically like, oh shit, I just took a bunch of snapshots by mistake. Basically like starts a church right there in the middle of nowhere and calls the land Bethel, which stands for holy land, or which
Bethlehem.
Not Bethlehem, Bethel.
Bethlehem, Randy.
Okay, no ham involved, but that's fine. So yeah, so you can clearly see, like, just thinking about the end of this story, there's a clear Jacob's Ladder scene where he ascends up the staircase with his son into a shining bright light, his dead son. He's reacquainted with his dead son and goes upwards towards, presumably, based on the name of this movie, a form of heaven, a biblical form of heaven. And a lot of the biblical stuff was stripped out of this to sort of obfuscate that, but it's still in there for sure. So there you go. Let's see. There is. Let's see. I read that. Yeah, I think that's about it in terms of like influences for this movie. But there's also a couple of things that I thought were interesting. They were just about the way the movie was made. Adrian Lyne, the director, made sure that Jacob and his visions never appear together in the same shot. And also, for all the chiropractor scenes, director Adrian Lyne ensured there was a real chiropractor on set who would work with Danny Aiello to ensure the authenticity. According to Lyne, chiropractors often approach him and thank him for going to the trouble of getting what they do exactly right. Chiropractor approved.
People
Thanks,
just,
man. You really did us right.
they know that bit of trivia. Like when they meet him, they just know that he was on set.
Oh,
Well, I mean, if you saw it, you would be like, "Oh yeah, they did it right." Like kind of like when I'm like, "Oh, it's bullshit that they're crawling through air ducts or some shit." So if somebody fell through an air duct and I met the director, I'd be like, "Hey, yeah, you got that shit on point, man."
Way to go, dude.
or like it's
Let's
like
five
when
it
I
out.
watch CSI in the 2000s and people would say the word enhance and have it mean I can add pixels to this photo.
Enhance. Add pixels to this photo.
Yeah, just make them up. Just make them up.
That's not your job? What do you even do, Randy?
Can you enhance this, Randy?
I'm gonna enhance it all over your ass. I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and cut it off at this one last one, which is just kind of interesting and sort of like makes sense once you hear it. The Bergen Street station in the film was actually an abandoned lower level portion of the station, which had been retiled and fixed to look as if it was in still working condition. So all that grittiness, that's authenticity, man. That's authentic New York grime and that shit.
You're welcome.
I believe it. I mean, everything I've seen, it's not like somebody made this like fantasy New York that, everybody just, it looks, every time it's shown, it looks terrible.
Yeah.
It looks fucking terrible.
So yeah, I'll cut off the trivia there, but there's quite a bit of trivia in this movie, and a lot of it has to do with like the philosophy behind it. So if you're interested in that, check it out. It's good.
Cool. That is going to do it for us this week here at Straight Chilling.
Wait, real quick, I want to talk about something.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
I've been like wanting to talk about it. Have y'all seen the new? I should have sent it out before we watched the thing like Bob does responsibly. But have you guys seen the new or some of the newer Godzilla trailers?
Yes.
I have not.
Like you've seen the new one, Bob?
Yeah.
So I think they look fucking badass.
I do too, but I felt the exact same way about the trailer they put out for the first Godzilla movie, and it was pretty lukewarm for me.
I agree, and the thing I was thinking about that movie, that trailer was the one where they were like falling through the sky and like
it's fucking awesome.
Oh my god, that's like one of the best fucking trailers ever. And I haven't watched that movie in a little bit, but I feel like one of the things is they really bogged it down with like the human story, kick-ass kid or whatever. Like he just like he's just like a big turd. He just like didn't do anything.
He's just a waif of an actor.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hopeful that now this time it's maybe a little more spectacle, because the spectacle that they got going on looks
great.
It looks fun, especially the new trailer where they're showing the monsters and they're like squaring off, man. Oh my god, it looks fucking dope. Oh my god.
This is the Michael Dougherty one too. Fucking Michael Dougherty directed this shit.
I have not seen this trailer, but I mean, sounds promising.
Here's the only thing it does is it's still, I've said it from the very beginning though, but like fuck Godzilla versus King Kong. I don't know if they're still going with that.
It's the next one.
It just doesn't make any goddamn sense. When you look at this movie, like fucking King Kong, like are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me?
He's going to take on 3 massive kick-ass monsters, and then the next one's just him and Kong.
Yeah, like what? It's just and I think Mothra is going to be like good guy monster because they're both blue. Like they got this color palette where it's like the red yellowish like versus like the blue. So I think it's going to be like a even square off, like sky, water, whatever. I don't know. I think either way, it looks fucking cool. Like if nothing else, I hope there's like story and they just make it like this big ass spectacle. But it does have like what's her name? Brown.
Millie Bob Thornton.
Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah, Bobby. I could not.
Billy Bobby Brown.
Billy.
But anyways, I wanted to kind of gush over this a little bit because since it came out, I don't know, last week or something like that, I've watched it several times and I'll just like freeze frame it or like I'll go back and I'm just like, yes, looks amazing. So I'm excited. Hopefully, like if they just go with like a spectacle, I think I'll be pleased. I'll go with my big old popcorn and I'll just be like, just take me away. Hopefully they don't try to bog it down too much. Just let them fight, There's
a little extra cream on this corn here.
I've heard that the next, I don't know if this is just rumor bullshit hearsay, but I've heard that Kong is going to be like in the movie that we saw him in, what was it, Skull Island? He was still a young, like he was not fully grown. So we have not seen that they do the mention. Okay, I don't remember that
in the movie. I think
So he's supposed to like grow quite a bit more theoretically, and also Godzilla is I've heard a theory that he's going to get beaten up pretty good in this movie, so he's going to be pretty fucked up by the time King Kong rolls around. But I think they're going to probably tease that at the end of this movie. I can't imagine that they won't.
If you watch this trailer, the size of these monsters is massive. Like they would have to make King Kong they're like in the fucking clouds. Like I mean, it's like that Cloverfield shit on fucking whatever. That last shitty Cloverfield movie. But I mean, they're like fucking you. I mean, like King Kong would have to be like so goddamn big, and he just gets his ass whooped in like Skull Island too by a shitty ass lizard. Oh my god, whatever. As long as this new Godzilla's movie has some good spectacle in it, I think I'll be pleased. Hopefully.
I am down. See. I'm down for any Doherty movie. So yeah, that's it. That's it for this week here at Straight Chilling. We're going to be back next week with a brand new episode. Next week's going to be our last normal episode of the year. We're going to be talking about a Christmas movie because 'tis the season. We're going to be visiting Christmas Evil from 1980, which I don't think any of us have ever seen before.
I have not.
That'll be interesting. So until next week, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. You can follow us on Twitter at STR8_chilling. We are on Instagram at Straight Chilling Podcast. You can send us an email through our website, straightchillingpodcast.com. If you want to join us on Slack, hit us up on any one of those previous social media platforms. Let me know. I'll send you a link so you can do so. One more time. Big shout out to Matthew. Thanks for picking this movie. Thanks for supporting us on Patreon. You are the shit, sir. Big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. Much love. Much, much love.
Be on the lookout, Patreon supporters, for that special bonus episode, Top 10 Cooter of 2018.
That is correct. I'll post it in the next day or two for sure. It'll be up there. A little extra treat. Little long extra treat, actually. Juice gets to ranting. Gets to drinking, gets to ranting.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's it. Until next week, as always, everybody, please keep chilling.